Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. A decision on whether or not to indict former President Trump is delayed yet again, and Republicans in the House and Senate are responding differently. Many in the House are quick to defend the former president, while senators, under the leadership of Mitch McConnell, are playing it a bit more reserved. NTD's Melina Wisecup is on the Hill with more. Melina, what's the general feeling there from lawmakers?
So there is slightly different messaging coming from Republicans in the House versus the Senate over the possibility of a Trump indictment, with House Republicans being quick to call this a politically motivated prosecution, while Senate Republicans have been a bit more mild on the issue. But I do want to note that there has been unity around the messaging that the New York District Attorney's priorities are questionable, for example, lacking the much needed attention on local crime and instead prioritizing this Trump case. And while the House Oversight Committee has been quick to question the legitimacy of the New York District Attorney's case against former President Trump, we asked Senate Republican Whip John Thune if he believes that the House's quick action here is justified. Here's what he said.
The House is going to handle matters their way. Questions are being asked by a lot of our members, and for that matter, people all across the country, about the prioritization of this DA, of this issue, over what are very current and real law enforcement issues in their city.
And this strikes a slightly different tone than what we've heard from House Republicans regarding this Trump case. For example, here's House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's take on it.
I look at it from this perspective. We live in America and it should be equal justice. This was personal money. This wasn't trying to hide. This was 7 years ago, statute of limitation. And I think in your heart of hearts, you know, too, that you think this is just political. And I think that's what the rest of the country thinks, and we're kind of tired of that.
And House Republicans are in a different spot than Senate Republicans, because they do have the ability to launch a probe into the prosecution, because they do hold the majority, whereas Senate Republicans do not have that ability because Democrats are in control in the Senate. As for how Senate Democrats are responding, well, they're actually taking a more mild approach themselves. I asked Senate Leader Chuck Schumer, who's from New York himself, his take on it. Here's our exchange. Some are kind of saying that this is Democrats' just political attack on Trump. What is your response to that?
Look, I think it's premature to talk about it. We don't know what's going to happen yet.
And there was some news floating around about the possibility of a decision on a Trump indictment to be made today, but the New York District Attorney told the grand jury not to come, so that grand jury will return again tomorrow, where we will be once again awaiting this decision on the Trump case that so many are watching closely and waiting for. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
Thank you for that, Melina. And to assess the latest developments of the prospects of former President Trump being indicted, we're happy to have on attorney and founder of Legacy PAC, Jared Craig. Jared Craig, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me come on the show.
Absolutely, Jared. Now, legal experts have been analyzing this pending indictment of former President Trump. There seems to be just so many holes in this case from a legal perspective. Now we're seeing the recess of the grand jury. What do you think is actually going on here?
I think the grand jury is having second thoughts about the evidence that's being presented to them. They are being presented with, if you're not familiar with how a grand jury operates, it's generally just prosecution evidence and witnesses. And if they are taking the day off at the end of their investigation, I think it infers that they aren't really sure if they're going to issue a true bill, which leads to an indictment. One of the things that I have seen is the statute of limitations running. It was a 3-year statute of limitation, and we're almost 7 years at it of the alleged conduct. And I think that really is being fought with on the new evidence standard, or the allegation of new evidence, which I believe is kind of a weak argument for the prosecution. The other thing that's not really been spoken about is, why is this DA handling this case? This case should be handled by the commercial division. This is a white-collar misdemeanor crime. If alleged, worst case scenario, it's a misdemeanor that is normally handled by the commercial division of the New York court system. So I think that with the adjournment of the grand jury, the failure to actually prosecute this within the statute of limitations, we're getting a lot of indication that this is turning into a big nothing burger with a side of lies.
Now, Jared, to your point about this being a misdemeanor crime, it raises the question or the fact that this is unprecedented to indict a former president or a sitting president for that matter. And it begs the question, what for, and what does it do to a country which is already so divided?
Well, if you look in the media and you look on normal search terms to see what is the charge that is being presented, and it's called hush money in the media. We're seeing hush money, hush. There's no language in New York Penal Code referring to hush money. What is being accused is Penal Law 170.05. In the second degree, it's falsifying business records. And that falsification of business records requires a specific intent to defraud. And what they're accusing him of doing is by mislabeling the fees supposedly paid to Michael Cohen in relation to a non-disclosure agreement payment of $130,000 paid by Michael Cohen, that the Trump administration was identifying that as legal fees. Well, Michael Cohen was his lawyer. I'm not sure there's any intent to defraud there. So if that's what they're going to charge him with, they've got an uphill battle to try to find out intent. Every good defense attorney knows when there's an intent as an element of a crime, that's one of the hardest things to prove. So in finding reasonable doubt or finding probable cause of that alleged crime, it's kind of an uphill battle for the grand jury. And I think that they're taking that to heart and having to sleep on it at least one more day.
Now, this recess of the grand jury today has thrown in a complete, wrinkle or curveball, if you will, to the whole process. So prior to this, I think a lot of people and reports were saying that we probably wouldn't see a perp walk, but most likely fingerprints and a mugshot of the former president, certainly on the table. If that were to happen, does this ultimately help or hurt the former President Trump in his bid for 2024?
Well, I personally believe in this situation, this might be where Donald Trump is playing chess while the DA's office of New York is playing checkers. I think that he's always a couple of steps ahead in front of these issues, these attacks, these witch hunts. I think it's going to help him. I think that he has monopolized the media content since 2015. He continually, everything he does, he gets the oxygen in the room. He gets the market share of what we're talking about. And I think the average person in the United States thinks that this is a travesty. This is absurdity. Trying to indict a former president on a misdemeanor charge to prevent him from running for president, I think that is, the average person sees this as kind of improper, a travesty, and an affront to our judicial system.
Founder of Legacy PAC, Jared Craig, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The central bank hikes rates once again. That's despite speculation that it would take a pause to relieve the pressure on the financial sector, which has just seen multiple historic bank failures. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
Inflation remains too high.
Despite a recent turmoil in the banking sector, the Federal Reserve on Wednesday rolled out another rate hike, this time by 1/4 point.
Without price stability, the economy does not work for anyone.
The latest move brings the federal funds rate to the highest level since 2007. It's especially significant as it comes even though the aggressive rate hikes have put the banking industry under pressure, as higher rates would push down the value of bonds that banks purchased when the rates were low. But Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell insisting that the banking system
is sound and resilient with strong capital and liquidity.
And the White House, while refraining from commenting on the Fed's rates decision, doubles down on Powell's take on the banking sector. And it defends President Biden's economic policies, despite the fact that Americans are still paying $371 more every month due to stubborn inflation.
Inflation is still too high. Does the president agree?
Look, the president has always said that he's going to do everything that he can to make sure that we work every day to lower cost.
But Republicans don't seem to agree.
Out-of-control spending is causing all sorts of problems. It's costing about $1,000 a month more every single month just to live, just for basic monthly household expenses.
The latest rate hike is putting pressure on Americans from both sides. People are facing inflation at the grocery store while having to pay more for their credit card interest and mortgages. But for the first time in a while, the Fed's statement on Wednesday did not explicitly refer to any future rate increases, which could be a signal that its consecutive hikes are nearing an end. Reporting from the White House, Arist Howe, NTD News.
A new report by House Republicans alleging that the FBI misused counter-terrorism resources against parents attending school board meetings. Documents show the Biden administration knew there was no justification for the Bureau's actions.
The Biden administration misused federal law enforcement and counterterrorism resources for political purposes. The Republican-led Committee on the Judiciary, together with the Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government, issued this new report on Tuesday. It's called A Manufactured Issue and Misapplied Priorities. Attorney General Merrick Garland in 2021 sent out a memo directing the FBI to address an alleged threat from parents at school board meetings. The new report is based on subpoenaed documents, among other material. It concludes the Justice Department's own documents demonstrate that there was no compelling nationwide law enforcement justification. The interim report also relied on whistleblowers. Last month, Congressman Jim Jordan mentioned
an FBI whistleblower discloses to Republicans on the House Judiciary that the FBI created a threat tag for parents voicing their concerns at school board meetings.
The new report says, after tracking the data from the threat tag, the FBI didn't observe any increase in threats directed at school officials. So why did law enforcement keep looking into parents? According to the report, it was political and meant to dissuade parents from pushing back against curricula and school boards. FBI Director Christopher Wray gave his perspective on Fox News. He said, "We are going to do like we always have, work with our state and local law enforcement partners to deal with violence. But we are not in the business of policing speech of parents." We reached out to the DOJ for further comment, but didn't immediately hear back. Reporting by Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.